Today's guest isn't just managing Airbnb listings, he's managing people, strategy, and scaling with purpose.
The ability to be able to quickly use cash because of how quickly it's coming in with short-term rentals has been a game changer for us.
From seminary to short-term rentals, our buddy Alex Steeg's journey is anything but typical, and that's exactly why it works.
You wouldn't necessarily think that there's one-to-one correlations between some of those kind of roles that I was in, but when I look back and I look at the activities and the responsibilities that I have for a management business.
He and his wife, Rachel, turned a side hustle into Shoreway Management, overseeing over 40 properties as one of the top-rated short-term rental managers in the country.
And so that's been growing a lot. We've been onboarding quite a few new clients this year, both ranging from small one-bedroom studio sized apartments and units up to 8,000 and 9,000 square foot 22-acre monstrosities of properties.
My name is Jason Muth. I'm a 31-time Airbnb superhost. I worked in the media business for over 25 years, and in 2016, we bought our first short-term rental, and that's turned into our chapter 2 in life. Since then, we've welcomed over 5,000 guests and their furry friends to our properties. And now we're here to show you how to create a smart stay. Now, here's a conversation with our business partner and good friend, Alex Steeg. All right, welcome back, Mr. Alex Steeg, to Smart Stay Show. What's going on, Alex?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Good to be with you.
Yes, great to have you back on the show. You are a familiar face and voice to those who listen to the show on a regular basis. We have attorney Rory Gill here as well, who everybody knows as a co-host of the show. And Alex and Rory, you guys have done some work together as well, which we'd love to hear a little bit about to whatever extent you could talk about it. So welcome, Rory.
It's nice to be here. I mean, Alex is the one who has the exciting story to tell, and I was lucky enough to work with him a little bit on some of it. So, I mean, let's cut to the chase a little bit here and tell us the highlight. What is it that you're working on? And then we'll kind of reverse engineer from there as to how we got there.
Yeah. Oh, man. We are probably overwhelmed with too many things. They're all good, but we have a lot going on right now. So you guys know we have our short-term rental management company. So we're located on Boston North Shore. So kind of coastal towns up from Marblehead through Salem, Beverly, Manchester, Gloucester, Rockport, and then inland a little bit over towards Essex and Ipswich, Mass. And so that's been growing a lot. We've been onboarding quite a few new clients this year, both ranging from small one-bedroom studio sized apartments and units up to 8,000 and 9,000 square foot 22-acre monstrosities of properties. And so our hands have been pretty busy with that, as well as you guys know back in December, I bought a 10-unit inn located in Ipswich called the Ipswich Inn. And so we've been pretty knee-deep in renovations over there. We decided to do all 12 bathrooms all over again, add a 13th bathroom, and then renovate all the rooms and common spaces. And so been quite a learning experience managing that property. I'm not technically the GC, but I've been functioning very much like the GC on that project. And so for my first commercial sized property where I'm pulling permits, working with contractors, it's been quite the learning experience. And then so it's been a lot on those two fronts.
I mean, just say that Alex is a partner of ours with Smart Stay Coaching, which we've referred to on this show, which is our companion piece to everything we talk about here. And we'll talk more about Smart Stay Coaching and why we all started that business and the types of people that we're working with and the types of folks that probably need the help of Smart Stay Coaching. But let me just jump in and mention that Alex and Rory and I met at a real estate meetup a number of years ago, actually about a year and a half ago at this point, I would say. It just feels like forever ago because I talk to Alex all the time now. Like, he's become a good friend in the business and someone to lean on for what we're all working on. And he and his wife, Rachel, have built Shoreway Management, as he just described. I do love, sometimes I'll ask questions like really directed to like a specific operational thing to Alex, and he'll say, and his like, my nickname is kind of like, let me ask Rachel. Like that's kind of his middle name, I think. And you've given her a lot of credit for building that business. In fact, she started it before you even got involved with it. You and I talked a couple of weeks ago when we were at the Airbnb meetup here in Massachusetts, and we got a drink afterward and just chit chatted a little bit. I loved hearing about your background. So we don't have to tell you your whole life story, but one thing I find fascinating about a guy like Alex, and if you're listening to this, you are either an operator or an aspiring operator or somebody that is working in a W-2 job looking to supplement your income or, move on from that. Alex transitioned from a career that's completely different from this as a residential advisor at a university, working multiple jobs while he's doing that because it's not exactly the most lucrative field. And he found his way into real estate investing along the way. And now, that past identity is something I don't even see you as, because I never knew you as that. I just see you as what you are now.
Yeah. Our my journey, my wife's journey has definitely been unique. That's for sure. I moved up. I grew up in Central Connecticut, and I moved up to the Boston area back in 2011 to go to my undergrad. I went to Gordon, which is where I was working when right when we started the business, and my whole intent on going up there, and then subsequently when I went to seminary, was to do vocational ministry, to be a pastor. And so a lot of the experiences that I've had, both from internships and jobs that I had during college, you wouldn't necessarily think, and I think that that's an encouragement in this, is like, you wouldn't necessarily think that there's one-to-one correlations between some of those kind of roles that I was in. But when I look back and I look at the activities and the responsibilities that I have for a management business, there's so much correlation between the skills that I grew in those different roles and the ways that I'm utilizing them now, even though you wouldn't necessarily see that. But yeah, our journey has definitely been unique. I mean, we bought, originally we were just going to do kind of the long-term rental, traditional real estate investing route. We came up with that idea back in 2018. I was in seminary. I had about a year left in my degree, and knew that I didn't want to go directly into vocational ministry working at a church. And so I started thinking about what are some roles that would be a good fit for me, that would set me up well. And so one day I was just sitting on the couch. I was renting, my wife Rachel and I were renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Gloucester. It was, in retrospect, a fantastic deal, paying $1,200 a month to be right next to the water. And I didn't realize that at the time, but just the idea of paying rent, I think rent was due like right around this time. And so the idea of paying rent just like made me sick. And so I thought, if I could get a job as a resident director at a college at Gordon, where I went, they would provide me free housing. And if I can get a 2-family before I get that job, then I'll be able to squeeze in, rent it out for a little while, and then rent both sides out while getting free housing. And so that's, it took a while for that to happen. I think we put in offers over the course of a year, just really competitive market. I mean, it still is. Finally got something. Right after we closed, I was offered the job. And so we actually only lived in that 2-family for about 5 months before we moved to campus and rented out both sides of that 2-family. And then just kind of kept doing the long-term traditional rental thing, trying to buy a house, an investment property every year, hustling our on the sides to just get as much money saved up every year. And then long story short, we ended up getting connected to short-term rentals, which is a total game changer. I mean, the velocity of cash that came in, the ability to be able to quickly use cash because of how quickly it was coming in with short-term rentals has been a game changer for us.
I just want to kind of underscore 2 things that I hear in that. One is, at this point in time, you're almost running Cape Ann. You have a lot of properties and different projects that you're working on in the area. But it was a pretty short trajectory from when you started. So if you're talking about, contemplating a new direction in your career in 2018, this is no more than 7 years old. And I also kind of want to underscore just the intentionality of it too. I mean, what I hear there is a lot of planning. And, while I joke that Jason and I kind of stumbled into it, that's not exactly true, but we were the benefactors of a lot of good timing, good luck, and kind of doing things a little bit more casually over a longer period of time. So just congratulations on those 2 fronts.
I appreciate you saying that. I think, not to go back to Jason, what you were saying before of, that's a question for Rachel, but I do think the person that I have married, the qualities and the characteristics that Rachel has had or has in her life, has made this a lot more doable. I think we're extremely different, and our skill sets, the ways that we're wired, do really complement each other quite well. And so, there's been days that she's wanted to quit, and I'm a little bit more on the visionary, creative ideas kind of person, where it's been able to kind of cast a vision for her. And then there's days where I'm just like, there's no way I could do any of this by myself, because she's so organized, so administrative. She's just a focused person. And so I've been super fortunate to find myself married to someone who is really a good complement to how I'm wired.
Explain some of the challenges in working with your spouse in a business like this that won't get you in trouble.
Yeah. So this is not the only thing where I have been, where Rachel has been my boss. So my first year out of seminary, when I was working at the college, I was doing 1,000 different jobs. I was working at the college in a couple different capacities. I was an estate caretaker on the side, which is what I had done during grad school, learning a lot about property management. And then the other thing that I was doing was Rachel was working at a nonprofit at the time. She was the director of the program for this area, and they just needed some help. And so I was working with her, and I think it speaks to the importance of finding yourself in a good role. She was my boss in that situation, and it was hard. It was really difficult. I dropped the ball on a lot of stuff. It wasn't a good fit for me. Whereas now, Rachel and I do complement each other really well. And I think it's been important for us to find ourselves working in the roles that are best suited for us. Like I love having conversations with prospects. I love talking to them about Airbnb. I love talking about real estate and in general with different families, and even talking to individuals where maybe they've been trying to operate an Airbnb on their own, or maybe they've been working with another management company that is maybe larger, more national, and they're just not getting the service that they should be receiving, or they're not performing. They just don't understand all the nuances to managing a short-term rental. I love that. And so being in that role alongside Rachel, who's been in a very behind the scenes operations role, has been a really good fit for us. And so that's minimized a lot of the challenges that we've experienced in past roles where where she was my supervisor, where now it's really clear for us. We're in this together. I think we both see the ways that we really contribute in positive ways to the business. And so certainly not without its issues. It's still challenging working with your spouse. And I think, to anyone who's listening to this who does work with their spouse, you understand the difficulty and the ambiguity at times of when work starts and ends, and when it's just family time, or it's easy for it to all kind of flow into it's the only thing that you talk about. And so I think that's actually been one of the larger challenges for us, is to maintain, this is what we do for work, but that's not just all of our life. Like, we have other pieces of our lives to be able to connect on and relate to and talk about. So
somewhere along the way, because technically Rachel started Shoreway, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the way you joined, and you both have become very trusted, knowledgeable experts in this field. AirDNA named Shoreway one of the top management companies in the country, right? According to whatever metrics that they had like last year. Do you feel like confident that all this stuff? Like, when did you switch from being, okay, maybe I'll work with Rachel and I could wing it, to I'm really good at this and I'm an expert in this, and like, I didn't go to college for it, but I learned this along the way, and I feel like I have a lot of credibility in this space now.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is just like getting your licks in. So when Rachel started this business on her own, she grew it really quick. She got her first management client within the first week and a half of her doing just all straight cold outreach, hitting Facebook messages, seeing people who were reaching out on different platforms. And when I saw that she was growing it pretty quickly, I was full-time at the college at this point. And then, I could kind of sense that there was a transition for me. You don't stay as a resident. It's not a career path where you stay as a resident director, living in a building with 160 college kids, dealing with problems all day, every day. And so I kind of knew that there was going to be a transition at some point. But when I saw how quickly Rachel was growing the business, I had kind of become her de facto handyman from doing work on our units. I had kind of learned a little bit. And so within probably about 4 or 5 months of her starting the business, she had grown it to the place where it was clear that I should be devoting more time to Shoreway and helping her. And so that was about 5 months in. I went from full-time to part-time at the college, and then another about 5 months of part-time, I left the college altogether. And so, it was about a year of Rachel building the business, me helping on the side a little bit, where I transitioned completely and left my W-2 altogether. But in that process, there was probably about halfway through when I actually went part-time at the college is when I started doing the sales and business development for our business. And so inevitably, I would get an inbound lead and I would try and have, speed to lead and reach out to them pretty quickly, or, meet up with that person. And, the first couple of meetings were just awkward. Like, I just remember the first one, and he would ask questions and, I wouldn't know the answer. And so there would be at times where, it was, maybe he was, I just remember like one time he wasn't looking, he was showing me something about the house, and I would like quickly send a text message to my wife and say, hey, what's the answer to this? Because I don't know. Or, a great one is, when we were still living at the college, we were living in this like garage apartment. It was one bedroom or 2 bedroom. Our bedroom was in the middle. That became my office. And so my wife was sitting in the living room, just maybe 5 feet away from me on the other side of a door, listening to me have these sales conversations. And I just would, a question would come up and I'd be like, oh, that's a really good question. What is that? And my wife would just hear me say that and shoot me a text with the answer real fast, so that I would be like quick to be able to answer. And so, you put your licks in and you learn, but, I think repetition really helps. Going through different experiences. Roy knows I'm going through an experience right now with a tenant where this is my first time ever dealing with someone who is not paying their rent. We live in Massachusetts. It's harder. It's more complicated. And so, I'm being stretched to learn and figure out how you deal with situations like this. But you better be sure I'm going to be way more informed. My whole systems, I'm completely revising the systems, the tools. I'm ensuring that nothing ever slips through the cracks again. And so, you kind of don't become an expert. You don't learn how to do and resolve a lot of these problems until you actually are faced with them and are forced to have to deal with them. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing that I would say about that too is you grow in the context of community. And so whether it's a community that you are paying to be a part of, like a mastermind, or even just joining some of these different Facebook groups where you can pose questions and have dialogue, or just by showing up to different networking events, Jason, Roy, you guys, we all met at a short-term rental meetup. And I remember, I think it was that first meetup, I remember talking to Chris Petsy and asking him a question about handyman stuff, because that was a big thing that I was wasting time on. And he gave me some really good feedback. He gave me some really good ideas and suggestions of how to find someone and remove myself from that role. And that was all in the context of community, of showing up, having conversations with people, and not just trying to be out on an island thinking that I can come up with all the answers myself. And so I think, it's been both experience and community that has helped us really elevate our business, figure things out quicker, and now be able to be in the position to be able to do that for other people and help them. Because maybe they only have one listing, maybe they only host 30, 40 people a year. Our at scale that we're at right now, that's in the course of a week. And so being able to apply that information to someone and help them expedite their learning curve has been really cool for us.
Hearing the value of learning lessons from others and their experiences, I want to take this opportunity to transition the conversation to a project that both of you have been working on, Smart Stay Coaching. Jason and Alex, could you take just a moment and introduce us to Smart Stay Coaching, explain what it is, and who would be a great candidate to enroll?
Yeah, I could start. I mean, we got talking, the two of us, and Corey Himmer, who we've also had on Smart Stay Show. He's doing a lot of great behind the scenes stuff and has been a fantastic host himself. We identified a cohort of people that are running short-term rental properties, will want to run that first vacation home, but don't quite know how to do it. And, Alex referred to community. My hunch is you probably had a pathway similar to us where you were doing it on your own with Rachel for years, right? And you were the hand to me, you were everything. I don't know what your deep network was besides, besides reading forums and podcasts and that kind of thing. For 5-6 years, I didn't have a network of people that I knew did this, until I joined the Short-Term Rental Secrets Mastermind that, you guys have been a part of over the years as well. Yeah. Now, once I met that crew of people, I was like, wow, there's lots of people out there that are doing what I do, that speak this language, that are doing it at a high level. I need to be around this type of person. But I think back to when, Rory, you and I started and we bought our second home, and we said, I've heard of this thing called Airbnb. We could probably figure this out. There are people every single day that purchase that second home in the Lakes region, on the water, urban environment, have a 2-family and want to rent out the second unit. And they need the income to be able to afford that, but they don't know how to do it well. And Alex, you see it all the time. I see it now with Pride Away Stays, where we're co-hosting in Provincetown. We see a lot of people that are doing it themselves, that their listing could use a lot of help. Their pricing could use a lot of help. Their photos look terrible. They haven't updated, any of their messaging in a long time. And you and I really know what it takes to be an active participant in the short-term rental world, because, as real estate investors, this is not considered a passive activity. This is considered an active activity, given the fact that, the length of stay is short and there's a lot of cleanings and there's a lot of handyman work and everything. So we launched that. I mean, I want to hear kind of your take on this as well, but like we got talking, saying like there's thousands of people across the country that could use help. And I think back to when I started, and I said, wow, I was sending out PDFs. I was copying and pasting everything. I had no technology supporting me. And the numbers we were bringing in were a fraction as to what we were bringing in today. I mean, my second guest caused a flood in one of our houses, which I've not talked about on this podcast. We've talked about the big flood. This was a separate flood that happened because I was stupid enough to think that I could teach a guest to leave a faucet on a drip that was prone to potentially freezing. And that was a big, big mistake. And I learned that literally a few months into launching our first property. And, the amount of times that we've wanted to give up over the years, what I'm trying to do when we work with clients with Smart Stay Coaching is encourage them not to give up, despite the fact that they're going to have lots of things that hit them that make them want to give up. So, Alex, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you thought would be a good idea as to why we launched Smart Stay Coaching.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny because I think that I think you, myself, Corey, I think we were all thinking the same thing. I think all of us, as we were operating our co-host businesses, we're all realizing that we would be coming across families where it didn't work for them. What they were going through wasn't working, whether it was they were managing something themselves, whether they had another manager who was coming in. And listen, I don't know about you guys if you've chatted a whole lot with other managers, but I had a conversation with a manager one time about a year ago where he was doing all of his own pricing himself. He was managing calendars himself. He would have to monitor his email inbox to make sure that he wasn't getting double bookings. And he would reach out to us to say, hey, I got a double booking. Do you have anything? It's like, well, the frequency that you're reaching out to me because of your double bookings means something is going wrong here, and we need to figure out better systems for you. And so whether the experience that they're having with a manager is just not up to par with what it should be, Or, maybe they just purchased something, and now after the purchase, they're thinking, oh, I want to do Airbnb. And so in that process then of me analyzing, how I think that property would perform, it's just clear that they would be losing money if they hired a manager. And so for me, as I have these different conversations, it is clear that not everyone is always going to be a good fit for management, but they need to have a management level experience. And so how do they have that level of experience without actually having a manager? In my opinion, is by having a manager show them the ins and outs. Because this business is so robust, there's so many things that you need to, if you want to perform at a high level, if you want your listing to perform and get that top, guest favorite 5% badge, there's so much that you need to know, whether it's just the nuance of how to shoot your photos or how to write your copy or understanding the Airbnb algorithm or knowing that you can't just have a consistent Monday to Friday price and a Saturday to Sunday price, where, you have to be able to use and know how to optimize your revenue and your listing performance. And so there's just so much that it can get really easy. And I think a lot of people can kind of fall into analysis paralysis of, well, where do I even start? There's so much here for me to start that I don't even know where to, I just don't even know where to begin. And so being able to have someone who, has a lot of experience, who knows how to manage all these different things, who, when you have a bad guest review come in, knows the Airbnb's policies to be able to say, hey, that sentence that guest wrote in there, that is retaliation, or that sentence there violates the terms and conditions of the policy. Let's go through the process of getting that review removed. Or knowing, hey, you should consider, all these different, there's so much there to be able to provide to a family high level consulting and coaching so that they can do the best job that they can. Because I don't think that people generally are buying Airbnbs or buying these properties just for the hoo-ha of it, to be able to just run a business that keeps them up 24/7 a day, or, keeps them worried about, a guest doing X, Y, or Z, or they can't get into the building. And, I had this happen where a guest couldn't get in and they just started breaking windows to try and get in. It's like, well, that could happen to you, right? And so how do you manage? No one wants to just have that concern and be worried about that happening. And so, they want it to be something that provides them more time, more freedom, more resources for them and their family, more enjoyment to be able to go and visit a property. And so how do you provide that? And so that's been my thesis in this whole process is there are people that it just doesn't make sense from a management perspective, but you can still help them and give them high level service. And so that's my thesis behind kind of the Smart Stay coaching model, is being able to help those people not have to give up a management fee, but still get really high level support and coaching and launch them forward into having a really profitable and successful short-term rental.
Yeah. So, Alex, I hear you with your mission to make self-management a little bit more approachable and more professional for your, 1 and 2 property owners. And I also hear you that, some examples of where they can step up their game is in revenue management, making sure that they're getting the right amount, making sure that they're getting the correct, good reviews, which are critical on it. Jason, can you crack open the curriculum for Smart Stay a little bit more and give maybe a couple of examples of how you teach, amateur property hosts and help them elevate their performance and become a little bit more professional?
Yeah, I mean, when Alex and Corey and I sat down and said, what would we have loved to have known when we started? And we just made a long list of those things. Alex brought the list to us, to be perfectly honest. I mean, like you had an outline already together, and then we basically grew it and then shrunk it and then really distilled down what we think we should be teaching people who are launching their first property to do it really well. I mean, it's really everything from the tech stack that we're recommending, meaning like what technology that is above and beyond Airbnb and Vrbo do we all use that we recommend? How do you integrate those things? How do you implement them? Setting realistic expectations, like why are you doing this in the first place? What do you expect to get out of it, both financially and personally? How to ask for those reviews and get the good reviews that we all seek, realize it's a hospitality business. optimizing your listing copy, photos. I mean, like really everything from the nuts and bolts of how do I physically write something down in this field, in this software, and what does that mean, to the bigger picture of like, what are you looking to achieve? Like, how do you get time freedom by doing this so your phone isn't ringing, at all hours? And what happens when people do bad things to your property? How do you protect yourself? How do you respond when guests ask certain things along the way? How do you build a team of people on the ground to assist you, whether they're handymen or cleaners or anybody else that is going to assist what you're doing? How are you a good neighbor with the people that are around you? We've tried to think of situations related to us as owners and as co-hosts and weave that into the first time operator or the second time operator. Like, we think that the folks that really need this help are the people that are about to buy a place, that just bought a place, that inherited a place, or are looking to do their second one. Like, people that are much more advanced, we're always learning. I mean, Alex, you have like 40 something units under management plus this hotel that you're building. We're over 20 at this point between what we own and what we co-host. Yet we have to keep challenging ourselves. I mean, we're recording this in a month leading into a busy season, which is frequently the summer, here in the Northeast. And we've had by far the biggest month of bookings, of advanced bookings that we have ever had, that I've ever seen, both with our current properties and with the co-host properties. And I attribute that to, the circumstance of the world that we're living in right now, and people really delaying when they want to show up to a place, between when they book it and the window of time. But I'm attributing it to my schooling myself better in revenue management, which are two words that I really never knew anything about when I first started in this industry. And we're constantly learning, right? What's going to happen. We use AI all the time with our tools. I'm sure you do right now as well. AI wasn't even a thing a couple of years ago. Whatever is about to happen in the next couple of years in this industry, we want to stay on top of that and be able to integrate that into that first and second time, host, and really teach them what things they're going to have to know to be a good host, to whatever extent they want to be a good host. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like that is really who we have been speaking to with Smart Stay Coaching. And, if this is the type of thing that you as a listener are saying, yeah, I wish I had a network of people around me that were not just people complaining in Facebook communities, because Alex and I have talked about this. I mean, a lot of the Facebook community people, there's only a few that I like really subscribe to anymore, because it's usually just hosts complaining about guests constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't feel like, that doesn't give me energy. That gives me like a weird sense. Like, if like I just complaining constantly about my guests, like, is that the world I want to live in? I don't, but I don't know about you, Alex. It's kind of who we think that, that we're here to serve. So, go ahead, Rory.
I just want to talk a little bit about the choice to self-manage your property and to hire a professional co-host for your short-term rental property, because with Smart Stay Coaching, you're making the professional caliber self-management more approachable for a lot of people. And I'll start by making a point of my own that there are a lot of tax benefits that are available to you if you're an active participant or an active manager yourself. Now, the devil's in the details, but take a look at what it takes to become a real estate professional and get real estate professional status, or at the very least, the rules you need to take advantage of the so-called short-term rental loophole. But taking that active management upon yourself opens you up to some significant tax benefits. That I guess that's not the purpose of Smart Stay Coaching, but that's just something to consider. But what else, Alex, should people consider when making the decision between self-managing or hiring a professional co-host?
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing is what I see happen often is I'm going to make a general statement. When people are purchasing a property, and I'll speak mostly to that perspective of the acquisition, not necessarily inheriting a property. But what I find, especially in New England, Boston, North Shore area, which is a traditional kind of vacation area. So I'm just going to speak specifically for my market. Despite it being a traditional vacation area where there are a decent amount of vacation rentals, most realtors have no clue what they're talking about when it comes to short-term rentals. And if they have any idea of short-term rentals, it's typically, at least again in this area, a very antiquated approach because of people who are applying the same mentality that they used pre-Airbnb, pre-COVID to how to underwrite deals in this area. And so what I find is that the deals that realtors thought that they were getting their clients are not deals at all, especially then when you factor in a management fee, which is going to range depending on, where you are located, what services that person or that company is offering. In my area, at least, you're looking at anywhere from 20 to 30, even upwards of 35% of a management fee. Now, there is ambiguity even in that of knowing, okay, is that gross revenue? Is that net revenue? If gross, is that manager taking fees off of both the cleaning fee, the taxes, all of that? And so I've even had it where, I have a client who, she's an awesome developer in this area. She is really great at what she does, but she has some stuff up in New Hampshire. She had a previous manager who told her, hey, I'm only going to be charging you, and you look at the contract, 20% of the net revenue. And she's like, hey, Alex, can you take a look at this? The numbers just aren't making sense to me. And I looked at all of her statements. I looked at every single one of her reservations for a certain time period. I ran the numbers and I was like, no, hey, you're actually looking at 25% of the gross. So not even is it just not correct, but now you're definitely not correct with the owner payouts that you've been getting. And so, every percent, when you don't know how to underwrite a deal, and when you're underwriting a deal that, or acquiring a deal that the numbers already don't work, every percent then of a management fee matters. And so the last thing that I want to see for people is people who buy a property because they feel like it's going to do really well, when, as we all know, like the industry as a whole in what is becoming successful and what is thriving with the different trends that we're seeing with amenities or the design. I walk into a lot of properties where it's gray walls and really basic furniture, or it's furniture that people scrap together from Facebook Marketplace and they think, hey, look how awesome this is. It's like, I so appreciate your heart and you feeling like this, but this is not going to thrive in a competitive market. And so there are these different things that have taken place that, lead to listings that where people think that they're going to be really great to just not actually being that great. And so then when you factor in the management fee, then there's just blood in the water and they're just losing money on a month-to-month basis. I have clients that I have taken from other management companies where they've come to me because they were losing money every single month. And that's just not a sustainable, feasible thing for a lot of people, right? And so I think that's a huge thing to consider. Is if you have a property that you did not really do a super thorough analysis of in your underwriting, take into consideration that a management fee is going to make that much more difficult for you to be able to cash flow.
Yeah. And these days also, because you obviously make a lot of money through your business, with those management fees, but it doesn't pencil out for everybody. No. Some people are, just don't have the time or knowledge or interest in doing it, which is why, companies like yours and ours get hired. But others that are coming into it for the first time, they might need to scrape their pennies together to get that down payment. And then they might need every dollar they can to pay that mortgage to be able to use that property, to be able to watch it go up in value and then take advantage of all the great real estate tax advantages. So they might need that 15, 20, 25, 30% management fee back in their pocket. Again, that's where Smart Stay coaching comes in, where, we just can teach you how to do it essentially, instead of work with somebody else, which is fine. Like, it doesn't cannibalize anything that we're doing. Some people want the full service. Some people just want to learn how to do it. Let me ask you a couple quick rapid fire questions as we start to like wrap up everything. What is one truth that you think that you've learned along the way that most people ignore in the short-term rental industry?
So a couple years ago, when I was in seminary, I went to a conference in Texas, and the person that was talking oversaw this massive organization. And so, he would speak every Sunday. He would often get a lot of feedback, both positive and the occasional, consistent negative from probably the same people every week, but nonetheless. And so his name is Jimmy. And so what he ended up doing was he has this rule that he calls Jimmy's highlighter. And what he would do is whenever he has bad feedback, negative reviews, he would print it out on paper. He would grab his highlighter and he would go through that, and he would only highlight the things that were very objectively wrong in his message or constructive feedback. So, if someone said something to him like, "Hey, I didn't think your opening was very funny." Like, okay, well, that's subjective. But if someone said, "Hey, you didn't really tie your intro back into the end and really put a bow and conclude really cleanly, your message," then, oh, hey, that's actually good feedback. And I think the temptation to kind of connect this to short-term rentals and is oftentimes, and Jason, you alluded to this with some of the Facebook groups. It can become really easy for short-term rentals and Airbnb and the reviews, which are the lifeblood of this industry, to become something that causes you to become very jaded, negative. You start to complain about the people that are complaining. And it can be hard to separate the positive, the potential for positive out of the harder feedback by being able to genuinely pause and take a step back and say, what in here is actually good things for me to highlight so that I can progress, make my listing better, and try to continue to be on top of my market. And so I think, human nature would say, well, I just want to disregard anything that makes me upset, and I don't want to listen to any feedback. What are the things that I can do to just automatically get this, 4-star review removed or whatever it may be. But I think if people want to continue to have the best listing in their market, if they want to get that guest favorite badge, they need to be able to continue to receive constructive feedback, whether it's valid feedback or maybe not so valid feedback, but being able to kind of quote unquote print that out, take the highlighter, and actually, ponder, hey, maybe this actually is good feedback. Maybe I was, maybe my instructions aren't clear, or maybe this bed is not comfortable, or, whatever it may be. I think we're so, entitled to feeling like what I think is right and everyone else is wrong. And I think that there's some feedback in there to be able to be a little bit more open and humble, that maybe your listing has some room for improvement, but we just don't want to have to deal with that or think that that's a potential.
Yeah, I support that. I mean, I've always seen feedback as a great way to really see what they thought about the property. Whenever I get reviewed before I review somebody, you still get that email and you're like, oh, what did they say? And I'm 500 reviews deep, more than that. You're probably thousands, and you get that moment where you're like, oh, I hope they liked it. Or, I hope this is a good review. And I've had some that the vast majority of our reviews have been 5-star. We have a 4.96 rating overall. So just sheer math of it, right? Most of them are that. I remember every so often, you review somebody back that you're confident was a good one, and then they threw you a curveball, and you're like, I didn't see that coming, right? Yeah. It didn't come up while you were there. You didn't mention anything, but these poor people were harboring that thought the entire time they were there, so you say, okay. And, you take that feedback and you choose to do something with it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Last 2 questions I have for you. I just lost the one I was going to ask. Okay. What one thing are you proud of, but you never really talk about?
A lot of this is because of what we've talked about before in terms of having a good community to learn and grow from, as well as what I talked about before with working alongside Rachel and just the fact that we're so different. But I am really proud of what we have been able to build with Shoreway. Not from a monetary perspective, because I think human nature would always I experience this with, human nature of like, oh, I just want to grow, whether it's for my ego or for my pocketbook or whatever it may be, like human ego is wanting for me to be greedy. But I'm really proud of what we've been able to build from a sense of my ability to be really present with my kids. So I have 2 boys. I have a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And we have another little baby coming in August, a little girl. And I am, which I don't think I've told you that before, but we're having a little girl. Surprise.
I didn't know that. That's
here we go.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yep.
Welcome to the
having a little girl. You can
girl dad
give me all
world,
the girl dad feedback. Teach me. But I am really proud of what Rachel and I have been able to build, in that it allows us to spend so much time with our kids. And that's both like a blessing and a curse, right? Like sometimes we drive each other crazy with the amount of time that I spend with my kids right now. But, I've really become recently a huge fan of this guy named Sahil Bloom. He wrote a book called The 5 Types of Wealth. And he's been posting a lot about just this idea that for a certain window of time in your kid's life, really kind of up until they're 10 years old, like you are their world. You are their best friend. The world revolves around you. And then after that, they get like friends and they start doing a bunch of stuff. But for those 10 years, like those are really sweet moments in time. And I'm just so thankful and proud that Rachel and I are able to be so present in those years with them, which I know is very atypical. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm really thankful for that.
I've seen some of what you've posted from him, and it allows us to reflect as well. And we're knee deep in the middle of those years right now. We get the unsolicited "I love yous" all the time. And one of these days we're going to hear that the last time. And I think you might have posted about the world of lasts or whatever it's called. I think I just saw you put it up yesterday, and I was reading through it. Rory and I've talked about this. Like, we never know when is the last time that we're going to give our daughter a bath where she's like, "Hey dad, I got this now," or when is the last time that we're going to pick out her clothes for school? She's very much in the mode of, I want to watch TV and literally sit here while you physically dress me and then force me out the door. But there are friends that she already has who are dressing themselves and putting together these most incredibly zany outfits, but their parents let them do it because in their mind, it looks good. We haven't quite reached that point yet, but at some point soon, we're going to reach that last moment of us picking the things out of her dresser. And, that she'll probably be like, "I don't want to wear that." All right. I guess it's been the last time that we've done that. So those are very precious moments, so I'm glad you've had a chance to reflect on that as well. It's why a lot of people in, the time freedom, real estate investor, entrepreneurship community do what we're doing. And, before we hit record on this, I was just up at her school for some book character parade that they were doing today. And, I did make the comment to Rory, I'm like, I don't think any parents in this town have jobs because they're all there. I don't understand how everybody is able to like go there at 9:00 on a Monday afternoon or Monday morning. But, maybe we just live in a community of entrepreneurs and work from home people and people that say they're working from home. But hey, I was legit there because we had the time to be able to do it. And I'm grateful that we were able to. Rory, do you want to ask the last question? Like, I have a list of them, but you get the last one.
Let's just kind of put this into perspective here. So we're, people who listen to this are at many different stages of this. They're considering doing it. They might have one property or they might have an empire. We're talking a little bit about the whys and why you do it, but, why should somebody consider taking more steps down this road into the short-term rental space? And I guess conversely, who maybe shouldn't come down this road?
That's a great question. I had a conversation with a prospect the other day, really successful developer from Ohio. She just moved to Massachusetts. And she was telling me that she has a difficult neighbor. I mean, and by all accounts of her story, I mean, this woman sounds difficult. And what I appreciated in that conversation was this woman's ability to be able to look at herself and know there is no way I could deal with guests. There's no way that I could get a message about someone complaining about, maybe the sheets weren't as soft as the ones that they have at home, or, maybe the type of coffee that you have isn't the kind that they prefer, or whatever it may be. She's like, I know that there is no way that I would want to deal with guests, or there's no way that I would want to have to feel like I'm on call 24/7, that if something happens in the middle of the night, I have to go figure out what to do. And that is something, I think one thing that I would say in terms of people that should not be doing this is, if you know that you're going to be, Jason, you sent me something the other day of a manager who, the way that he responded to guest feedback was honestly embarrassing. And he was so snarky. He was so rude. If you can't have any semblance of thick skin in this industry, you probably shouldn't do it. And you can have, this is when I was in seminary, I had a professor say that the challenge of life is, how do you develop thick skin while still maintaining a tender heart? And I think that is a challenge in this industry as well, is to be able to develop thick skin while still being tender, to be able to receive feedback. But if you can't receive feedback, if you're not someone who can pause and like reflect and see if that's good, don't do this, because that's going to come out in the way that you respond to reviews. It's going to come out in the way that you communicate with guests, both pre-stay, during their stay, and then after their stay as well. And I just think that would be setting yourself up for disaster. And so part of this is to say, hey, if you're someone who has any emotional intelligence and ability to be self-aware and reflect on your life and how you typically respond to negative situation, and it's not a good positive way, potentially consider hiring it out, or finding someone in your family who could be responsible for certain aspects of this business. But to the person who maybe should do something like this, if you're willing to kind of get down and dirty and work hard and grind it out, I think that this is something that could be really amazing and advantageous for you and your family. But a lot of this comes down to, do you have the ability to be self-aware and introspective to say, kind of, this is who I am and I'm okay with that, and I'm going to pivot to this or that. I think that's important.
One thing that I've really enjoyed in the time that we've known each other, Alex, and now that we're business partners and, confidants in this world, I don't know a lot of people that have been to, seminary school theology. I know some people in my life, but, you're showing a great way to apply the knowledge that you learned there in a business way, through empathy and through leadership and understanding. My novice brain, I was raised in a Catholic household and don't go to mass anymore, but went through all the sacraments and all the ceremony of going to Catholics, every Sunday. But it was just a very different way to think, versus what you're kind of introducing right here. And my mindset is that everyone that goes to, studies theology is going to become, going to just have a career devoting to religion. But you've found a way to take the knowledge, maybe kind of keep religion as part of your life, but not apply it to your everyday and apply it to a business that you're growing. And, I got to say, I don't think I would have been able to understand that if you and I weren't in such close communication right now. So, I'm glad that you've introduced kind of that element that is probably just your everyday into, our lives right now, and seeing how those lessons can be applied to a business. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this are like, you dummy, like, of course you could apply these things, but we certainly didn't have that understanding as to how to. And I think back to, the years of, receiving the Eucharist and kneeling and standing and listening to whatever happens in Catholic Mass. And I'm like, this is not applicable to my life. That was just a phase of my life I had to go through. But, I think you're showing how it is. So, I really appreciate your diving into kind of your pivot from the world that you studied and the world that you're in right now. Short rate management's killing it. We'll put a link in the show notes for anybody that wants to learn more about what you guys are doing. Obviously, we'll link up Smart Stay Show and Smart Stay Coaching in the show notes as well. We welcome you to reach out to us if you want to be a coaching client of ours. And Ipswich Inn, we didn't talk about it a ton on this, but if you're in the area, these guys are beautifully renovating this historic inn in Ipswich, Massachusetts, which is just about a half hour south of where we live. You don't live too far from it either. Ed Sheeran just built a pop-up pub there this past weekend. I don't think that that's going to be in existence in perpetuity, but it certainly put Ipswich on the map for a short period of time in the national conversation. And we'll have many more of these chats on Smart Stay Show. If you want to listen to all of us, in the course that we've recorded and then get a little bit more one-on-one time with us, Smart Stay Coaching is the way to go. Alex, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for officially coming on the show and sharing your story. Rory, thank you, as always, for all your insights. We'll link up str.legal also here in the show notes. And thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this, we love 5-star reviews. And you should subscribe on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And until next time, we'll see you next time.